ජීවිතේ වැඩිපුර ලැබෙන හොඳම දේවල් විඳින්න. දැන් SLT broadband වෙතින් 75% දක්වා වැඩිපුර data සතුට ජනවාරි 1 වෙනිදා සිට ශ්‍රී ලංකා ටෙලිකොම්.
Easing restrictions. The government decides to make mobile phone app Viber available for use. Law and Order Minister assures the state of emergency could also follow suit. Bottom line. Former diplomat dissects recent events in the country.
Then as now, the people were blamed for the violence. There's already an international campaign against Mahinda Rajapaksa claiming he is behind the anti-Muslim attacks.
Social media ban. Human rights activist says the government should be regulator, not violator.
The decision to ban Facebook is total violation of fundamental rights. Lift the ban for this Facebook.
An imperial welcome. President Maithripala meets the Japanese emperor, followed by a business forum. Another dismissal. Trump fires chief diplomat Tillerson after clashes, replaces with loyalist CIA director. Good evening and welcome to First at 9. I'm Dhammika Kanaka. We start this evening with the local stories. President Maithripala, who is currently engaged in a state visit to Japan, met with Emperor Akihito this morning. Both leaders held cordial discussions at the Imperial Palace in Tokyo.
President Maithripala and First Lady Jayanthi Sirisena were warmly welcomed by Emperor Akihito and Empress Michiko upon their arrival at the Imperial Palace in Tokyo. The Japanese emperor expressed his pleasure over the visit of President Maithripala Sirisena and said that long-standing ties between the two countries will be further strengthened as a result of this visit. During the meeting, the president expressed his gratitude to Emperor Akihito for the invitation extended to him to visit Japan and said that it is his expectation to strengthen bilateral relations between both countries in all spheres. The emperor, recalling his visit to Sri Lanka in 1981, said that he was privileged for the opportunity to visit the historical temple of the Sacred Tooth relic in Kandy. The Emperor of Japan expressed the country's readiness to provide assistance to Sri Lanka when needed. Following the meeting, Emperor Akihito accompanied the president for a tour of the historical imperial mansion. Meanwhile, President Maithripala Sirisena attended an investment forum held in Tokyo this afternoon. The forum was attended by investors and entrepreneurs from both countries. Minister of Development Strategies and International Trade Malik Samaravikrama addressed the gathering.
Sri Lanka and Japan have diplomatic, cultural, aid, trade and investment relationships dating back many decades, and our partnership has endured the test of time. His Excellency's visit to Japan today is to further strengthen the relationships between our two countries. Ever since diplomatic ties were first established between our two countries back in April 1952 under the San Francisco Peace Treaty, our partnership has continued to strengthen. The early years of our bilateral relationship was characterized by cultural ties based on Buddhism and other shared values. It evolved into an important economic partnership marked by large flows of Japanese aid to Sri Lanka, as well as ties formed through trade and investment.
Following the event, the president met with the chairman of the Japanese External Trade Organization, Hiroyuki Ishige. He also held discussions with the president of the Japan International Cooperation Agency, Shinchi Kitaoka. President Maithripala Sirisena also met with the chief incumbents of Sri Lankan Buddhist temples in Japan in Tokyo today. The president commended efforts made by the chief incumbents to promote Buddhism in Japan. Following the meeting, the president met with Islamic religious leaders in Tokyo. Speaking on the recent incident in Kandy, the president said that measures are being taken to promote peace, brotherhood and harmony all sects in the country and is saddened by the situation given rise to by a small group of individuals.
Facebook says they are responding to the situation in Sri Lanka and are in contact with the government and non-governmental organisations to support efforts to identify and remove hate speech. Facebook had sent statement via an email to the CNBC media network in the USA following an inquiry by the network. Meanwhile, the Government Information Department says that the ban on Viber cross-platform instant messaging and voice over IP application will be lifted from midnight today.
Following the recent unrest in several areas within the Kandy district, government took measures to ban usage of social media platforms in the country. The government emphasized that the unrest could worsen as there is a high possibility for extremist statements and posts to be circulated through these digital platforms. Sri Lankan government's decision received international spotlight and all major foreign media networks kept their continuous focus on Sri Lanka over the past few days. It is in this backdrop that Facebook had stated to CNBC that the company has clear rules against hate speech and incitement of violence, adding that they are in contact with the Sri Lankan government and non-governmental organizations to support efforts to identify and remove such content. Meanwhile, responding to the ban on social media platforms, US Ambassador to Sri Lanka Atul Keshap tweeted today, saying that the longer the ban persists, the greater the damage to tourism, IT sector, business and the nation's reputation for freedom and openness. Australian High Commissioner to Sri Lanka Bryce Hutchison also tweeted yesterday, urging the ban to be lifted on social media. As soon as the ban was imposed, many social media users in the country started logging into these platforms through the VPN mobile application. Cyber specialists, however, warn against using the particular mobile application.
The VPN has been established with the agreement to pass information of their clients to a third party. For example, if we give our information to Facebook, we do so with our consent, but we wouldn't know who receives our information when it comes to VPN.
Meanwhile, Sri Lanka Computer Emergency Readiness Team advises the public to alert the authorities of extremist content on social media.
When you are using social media sites like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram or YouTube, you have to be responsible and you have to be very careful on what you share and what you post on those websites. Whenever you start up a Facebook account, you start up that account with the agreement with that particular website with their own terms and conditions, which says that you have to be responsible for your account and activities, as well as you should not be using this to harm or cause any trouble to any other person. And if you feel that there are any information and postings and pictures posted by others and it should not be there, you can report it to the Facebook directly, stating that this kind of a content should not be there, so that the Facebook will take some action according to their terms and conditions by removing those unwanted content as well as unwanted accounts.
Meanwhile, Minister of Telecommunication and Digital Infrastructure Harin Fernando says, following discussions with the company, a group of employees of Facebook will come to Sri Lanka to look into a mechanism that will help remove extremist content from the site. Meanwhile, issuing a statement, the Department of Government Information notified the public that the ban on Viber, cross-platform instant messaging and voice-over IP application will be lifted by midnight today. The statement said that the decision was taken after considering the difficulties faced by Sri Lankan expatriates in communicating with their families.
Now, Minister of Law and Order Ranjith Madhumbandar says that the state of emergency prevailing in the country, as well as the ban on social media platforms, will be lifted soon. The minister said this during the program 360 on Derana yesterday.
Don't worry, we won't rule this country under the state of emergency. As the Minister of Law and Order, I state with responsibility that the state of emergency will be lifted soon. We will take measures to lift the ban based on discussions with security forces and upon information we receive. Print media and electronic media functioned well during the incident. We know that various rumors were spread through social media platforms. We know that 90% on Facebook use it properly, be it for their business or education. We held discussions with security units today as well, and we will lift the ban on Facebook before long. But we will investigate those misusing Facebook.
In the meantime, opinions were forthcoming from politicians on the Facebook ban.
The reason why they banned social media, where there are thousands who promote peace, was because they couldn't bear their incompetence being criticized on social media. What we say is if someone uses social media platforms to spread views which are unsuitable for the society, the government should put in place a mechanism to punish them. If the government bans Facebook, which is used by a considerable number, it will be infringing upon media freedom and democracy of the people. We approved the decision to suspend social media since it was a need at that time. It affected a considerable section of society. Now the conflict is peacefully resolved, and therefore we request the government to lift the ban on social media sites such as Facebook. The government should act promptly on these situations. A public response is required from responsible sections of the government. An agile governance is what is needed. Ministry of Mass Media and the police have a responsibility towards this.
While condemning government's move to ban social media platforms in the country as a total violation of basic human rights, former Sri Lankan Human Rights Commissioner Dr. Pratibha Mahanamaheva urged the government to introduce regulations to curb hate speech and extremist campaigns. Speaking to us, Dr. Mahanamaheva also called the government to lift the ban immediately and resort to legal measures.
Sri Lanka, we only have 2007 Computer Crime Act. Now, for example, Facebook is not coming under that. If people put defamatory statements against a religion, statement against a nationality, it's very hard to get the content. Only thing, if you want to go for a case, you have to get that for a defamation case. The decision to ban Facebook is total violation of fundamental rights, which is recognized by the 1978 Constitution, freedom of expression. And also this is more highlighted in the 90th Constitution, freedom of getting access information and sharing information, and also 2016 Right to Information Act. But Facebook or even any other media, Article 14, freedom of expression, is subject to certain limitation. Those limitations are basically national security, national interest, harmony among the religions, harmony among the nations. Yes, if anyone is doing that, ban that persons. More than 200,000 businessmen in Sri Lanka suffering because of this. Now emergency situation is over. So lapse of this emergency situation, government is due to by ethically and legally lift the ban for this Facebook, change the law or introduce a new law to regulate Facebook in Sri Lanka.
Meanwhile, columnist and new media researcher Nalaka Gunawardena warns that the country should not be pushed into having what he referred to as a cyber nanny state instead of a government. He pointed that out that the obligation should be encouraged by social media users rather than monitoring content for hate speech.
Police the streets, make sure there is proper law enforcement before trying to police the web or social media. Now there is a responsibility for users of social media to be restrained, to be careful in what we share so that we don't inflame. So critical and cautious use of these platforms is what we need, and not wholesale blocking. And we certainly don't need a government to tell us what we say or how we say it on social media or other web spaces. We don't need a cyber nanny state in this country. We need digital literacy, and we need responsible citizens using digital tools and social media platforms for the greater good. The blocking of social media platforms has now way outlived its original justification. Let life online get back to normal. This is the message that we have for the authorities, the governments who continue with this stupid ban.
Former diplomat Tamara Kunanayagam raises the question as to who would benefit from the recent unrest in the Kandy district as well as political uncertainty in the country. Addressing a media briefing organised by the organisation earlier, the former diplomat compared the unrest in Kandy to the political upheaval in the country during the 1980s.
The situation today is eerily comparable to July 1983. The only difference being the community targeted yesterday were Tamils, today Muslims. Then as now, the UNP was in power. Then as now, the tragic events took place in the context of tremendous economic and political crisis and social upheaval. Then as now, the people were blamed for the violence. The question that arises, I know, is in everybody's mind, is who benefits from the crime? Is it possible that people who have been victims of more than 2 decades of war would want to go through another? Is it possible that the people benefit from a state of emergency that permits the regime to curtail their freedom of expression and opinion? If the attacks don't benefit the people, then whom does it benefit? Does it benefit the political opposition? There's already an international campaign against Mahinda Rajapaksa claiming he is behind the anti-Muslim attacks. In fact, the effect of the anti-Muslim attacks has already been to place the opposition on the defensive. There's been a deafening silence until I saw this morning on the proposed no-confidence motion against the Prime Minister, on the bond scam, on the controversial project to draft a new constitution. The attacks targeting a particular ethnic or religious group help justify Washington's demand that universal jurisdiction or external intervention be applied to Sri Lanka through the implementation of its March 2015 Human Rights Council resolution.
Now moving on to more local news, the Office of Missing Persons pledges to examine cases of both civilian and combatant disappearances, including several thousand members of the armed forces, police and civil defence force who have been identified as missing, in addition to members of various armed groups who were party to the conflict. Issuing its first media statement, the Office of Missing Persons, which officially commenced duties following the recent appointment of its chairperson and members, said a consultative approach will be employed during examinations.
In its first statement, the Office of Missing Persons said that its primary tasks of tracing missing and disappeared persons, clarifying circumstances in which they took place, protecting the rights and interests of those missing or disappeared and their next of kin, and identifying the avenues of redress for those affected and making recommendations to the relevant authorities in order to prevent the recurrence of such incidents will be carried out impartially and objectively. The statement adds that the 7 members of the OMP are deeply committed to the welfare of all victims of Sri Lanka's conflicts, keeping in mind the duties entrusted by Parliament irrespective of the victim's ethnicity, religion or region. The OMP says, as legislated, it will function as a permanent office given the magnitude of the problem and the complexity with respect to the multiple tasks required to search for the missing and the disappeared. Thereby, the office will employ a consultative process of speaking to victims and other stakeholders during the examinations and invite the support of the people.
Minister of Prison Reforms, Rehabilitation and Resettlement, DM Swaminathan, says that despite economical challenges, the Sri Lankan government will strive to adhere to international standards in facilitating prison inmates. He said this while addressing the opening ceremony of the 7th Asian Conference of Correctional Facilities Architects and Planners in Colombo yesterday.
The 7th Asian Conference of Correctional Facilities Architects and Planners 2018 was held in Colombo yesterday under the patronage of Minister of Prison Reforms, Rehabilitation and Resettlement, DM Swaminathan. Representatives of 19 countries, including Sri Lanka, participated in the event.
I believe that holding the conference here in Sri Lanka is a privilege to all correctional professionals in Sri Lanka. The government of Sri Lanka took a great challenge to relocate the existing prisons and build new prisons, spending government funds for the betterment of prison inmates. In one aspect, it is an economic challenge as a developing country to spend huge amount of money to build a comfortable prisons. Anyhow, the government of Sri Lanka is more concerned on rehabilitation of inmates in the proper way and follow the international standards relating to inmates. The Ministry of Prison Reforms and Rehabilitation, Resettlement and Interreligious Affairs has identified 8 prisons to relocate and establish new prisons according to international standards. 3 prisons have already been finished and relocated, namely the Bogambara, the Jaffna and the Agunugula Pedesa. Mathura, Galle, Trincomalee, Batticaloa and Velikada prisons are in a designing process. All these prisons are designed according to the international standards with special 3 committees of Department of Prison consult the designing teams of the International Committee of Red Cross, giving their fullest support to make aware the designing teams on international requirements.
You are watching Sri Lanka's award-winning news channel, Other Derana 24/7.
Welcome back. You're watching First at 9. We continue with more local stories. 3 fishermen who set out to sea from Nayaru in Mullaitivu despite warnings of inclement weather were reported missing today. Deputy Director of the Disaster Management Centre, Pradeep Kodipili, said search operations are currently underway by the Navy and the Air Force to locate the missing fishermen.
3 fishermen who reside in Bangadenya in Chilau travelled to Mullaitivu to fish off the seas of Nayaru around 6:30 yesterday morning. According to police, a relative of one of the brothers of the missing fishermen notified police about their disappearance. The fishermen were identified as 50-year-old Miraj Miranda, his son 24-year-old Mudaran Miranda and his brother 48-year-old Emmanuel Miranda. According to the Deputy Director of the Disaster Management Centre, Pradeep Kodipilli, the Navy is deployed to conduct search operations to locate the missing fishermen.
There is one boat missing reported from Mullativ area, and Disaster Management Centre already coordinated Navy and the Air Force support to find those three people who are missing at the moment. And there is no any other incidents being recorded, but fishermen are still coordinating with Disaster Management Centre, and a lot of fishermen not being out to the sea for the fishing.
Meanwhile, Kodipilli requested the fishing community to refrain from engaging in fishing activity as the inclement weather is expected to prevail across the island.
For the moment, still the Met Department has issued a warning over the possibility of strong winds from Jaffna to Hambantota via Aluthara, Colombo and Matara Gaul area. So still fishermen will be advised that those sea areas would be very dangerous. As for the Met Department, that conditions still getting little down from tomorrow onwards, but still there is the warning being given to the country.
Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency, Yukiya Amano, will arrive in Sri Lanka tomorrow on a one-day official visit upon invitation by the Sri Lankan government. The International Atomic Energy Agency is an independent science and technology-based organisation established in 1957, which serves as the global focal point for nuclear cooperation and assists its member states. Sri Lanka is a founding member state of the IAEA since 1957, and it received technical assistance to the IAEA Technical Cooperation Programme in order to develop nuclear science and technology in the country. During his stay in Sri Lanka, Director General Amano will visit National Centre for Non-Destructive Testing and the Sri Lanka Gamma Centre for the Sri Lanka Atomic Energy Board, which are two scientific centres established with the collaboration of the IAEA. He will also visit Sri Lanka Atomic Energy Regulatory Council. Now, the batch of 95 devotees who gained the privilege to set off in pilgrimage to Damadiva after listening to programs Damsak Nada and Dehami Derana broadcasted via FM Derana arrived in Varanasi, the ancient city of Varanasi, on Sunday.
They paid homage to the Sammukha Chaitya in Varanasi yesterday morning, and following which they visited Migadaya at Isipatana and the historical Ashoka Pillar. They also visited the Damsabha Mandapaya, Mulagantha Kutiya and the location at which the Lord Buddha spent his first rainy season. These devotees are scheduled to stay in Damadiva for 12 days with all facilities provided. The program Damadiva Vandana by FM Derana has now entered into its fifth phase.
The Department of Examinations says the results of the GC Ordinary Level Examination will be released at the end of this month. Commissioner General of Examinations, Sanat Pujitha, said that as things stand, results will be released on the 28th. Now let's take a look at some other stories making news across Sri Lanka.
A Sri Lankan woman identified as 38-year-old Priyantha Jayashankar from Gaul was shot by the son of her employer in Saudi Arabia. The Foreign Employment Bureau said that the man who shot the woman, who was a domestic aide, also killed himself using the same rifle. Vice Chancellor of the University of Uvavallassa, Dr. Jayantalal Ratnasekara, says that all faculties of the university are closed indefinitely owing to an outbreak of chickenpox. He added that 27 students from the university hostel alone are affected by the contagious disease. A member of the underworld was arrested last night in the area of Miriswata in Valiagoda while in possession of 6 grams of heroin. The suspect is identified as 24-year-old Prabhat Madhushankar, alias Barrel Shankar. The Hambantota police are conducting investigations into the theft of a large quantity of army uniforms from a shop which tailors uniforms located at the Thissa Junction in Hambantota.
Now, the Board of Investment says the Koggala Export Processing Zone contributed $122 million worth of exports earnings last year. Issuing a communique, the BOI said that there are currently 23 enterprises located at the zone, which includes garments, plastic items, aircraft repair and boat building. The BOI added that the zone has emerged as a major economic centre in the south, which currently employs 14,070 persons, out of which 80% are women. The cockle export processing zone is located in the Habaruduwa Divisional Secretariat of the Galle district in the southern province of Sri Lanka. The zone became operational in 1991 and extends to 227 acres, of which 195 acres are dedicated to industrial use. Oil prices dipped today, extending losses from the previous session as the inexorable rise in US crude output weighed on markets. US West Texas Intermediate crude futures were at $61.18 a barrel, down 18 cents from their previous close. Brent crude futures were at $64.77 per barrel, also down 18 cents. Meanwhile, the Nasdaq Composite gained 0.4% to 7,588.32 today, a new all-time high. Spreadbetter is expecting a slightly lower start for European stocks, with Britain's FTSE dipping 0.1%, Germany's DAX inching down 0.05% and France's CAC shedding 0.07%. Japan's Nikkei 225 recouped earlier losses and rose 0.7%, with gains in chip-related technology shares, while Shanghai dipped 0.1%. The dollar index against the basket of 6 major currencies rose 0.1% to 89.999 after shedding about 0.2% overnight.
With gains in chip-related technology shares.
Now, Sri Lankan shares rose slightly today, posting the highest close in nearly 2 weeks as investors picked up beverage and telecom stocks and foreign investors returned to the market. The All Shares Index closed 10.10 points higher, or 7.10 points higher rather, to 6,554.83, while the S&P SL20 index closed flat, down 0.20 points. Market turnover was 2.5 billion rupees. Now, in fact, the Sri Lankan rupee ended weaker today due to imported dollar demand, while late exporter sales of greenback capped the fall. The rupee, which traded at 155 rupees and 83 cents during the day, closed at 155 rupees to 70 to 75 cents per dollar, compared with yesterday's close of 155 rupees and 50 to 70 cents. Now, let's take a look at how the Sri Lankan rupee traded against other currencies during the day.
Sri Lanka's premier news channel, Other Derana 24/7.
Welcome back. Now let's take a look at news from around the world. US President Donald Trump said he had replaced Secretary of State Rex Tillerson today, with Central Intelligence Agency Director Mike Pompeo ousting the embattled top diplomat after a series of public rifts. Trump announced the cabinet shakeup on Twitter and said he had tapped the CIA's Deputy Director, Gina Haspel, to replace Pompeo at the intelligence agency. Tillerson's departure represents the biggest staff change in the Trump cabinet so far and caps months of tension between the Republican president and the 65-year-old former ExxonMobil chief executive. A senior White House official said Trump asked Tillerson to step down last Friday but did not want to announce it while he was on a trip to Africa. The official said Trump works well with Pompeo, a former congressman from Kansas who is seen as a loyalist within the administration, and wanted him to place before US President's planned talks with North Korea leader Kim Jong-un. Now, of course, let's take a look at some other emerging stories from around the world.
Chancellor Angela Merkel's Conservatives and the centre-left Social Democrats signed their coalition agreement yesterday, almost 6 months after Germans went to the polls last September. In a brief speech ahead of the signing ceremony, Merkel said voters had given different parties a mandate to find a stable majority, which proved everything but easy. A package bomb that killed a Texas teenager and injured a woman yesterday was believed to be linked to a deadly blast in the state's capital city earlier this month. Austin police said yesterday's package bomb that killed a 17-year-old as well as a March 2nd explosion that killed a man were being investigated as homicides. Tibetan spiritual leader the Dalai Lama emphasized on the convergence of scientific findings and spiritual teachings for good emotional health in India's northern hilly town of Dharamsala yesterday. The Lama was speaking in the inaugural session of the 33rd Mind and Life Conference, which was based on the theme of secular ethics, with over 200 scientists, scholars and thinkers participating from different parts of the world.
Time for sports. Sri Lanka suffered their second straight defeat in the Tri-Nation Series Nidahas Trophy last evening at the hands of India at the R. Premalasa Stadium. The hosts set India a target of 153, which they chased down with minimal fuss.
After Sri Lanka handed them a defeat in the series opener, India was eager to make amends. The visitors even got the toss right and put Sri Lanka into bat. Dhanushka Gunatilaka and Kusal Mendis made a good fist of it in the first 2 overs, but Gunatilaka departed for 17 in the first ball of the third over. Kusal Perera couldn't replicate his last 2 innings and soon fell for 3. No Sri Lankan batsman was able to make an impression on the Indian bowling, with the exception of Kusal Mendis, who posted the 38-ball 55. With the match reduced to 19 overs aside due to rain delays, the hosts were 152 for 9 at the end of their innings. India's chase saw both openers departing within the first 4 overs, but from then on the side looked solid. Manish Pandey put on an unbeaten 42 while Dinesh Karthik remained unbeaten on 39 to guide India over the line with 6 wickets in hand and 9 deliveries remaining. The post-match media briefing, Sri Lankan captain for the day, Thisara Perera, gave his analysis of the match.
This is not a good score to defend, in this wicket. It's really good wicket to bat. We are 25 runs behind. That's why I think that is the main reason for our loss. Kusal Mendis batted really well, so other batters didn't execute their plans.
You are watching Sri Lanka's award-winning news channel, Derana 24/7.
Now, Katrina Chang is at the Derana Weather Centre with your forecast first evening edition.
A very good evening and welcome to Forecast First. Now, your temperatures will vary between 19 and 29 degrees Celsius over the course of the day, with a low pressure zone expected in most regions of the island, particularly central and western parts of the island. Now, this could mean we can expect some thunder showers in the areas of Trincomalee, Jaffna as well as in Mannar areas. Moving downwards, we can expect some thunder showers in the areas of Kandy, Colombo and Galle.
That's it from all of us here at First at 9. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.